My name is Brian. Please can I advise you? Please can I also remind to the mic. Ronnie, please can I mobile phone? Disclosure of interest to any members or officers. Hearing relation to hearing should fashion left. Adopted procedure. Party will be allowed discretion to allow addition taken into account the requirement. Only the points aimed within supplementary. No new evidence accepted except by group. That committee has read all the written which is Alvin to be Pascal. The only issue, consider issues relating to the licensing of prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance. Subcommittee also has license, council's license.
Nathan Mounting, solicitor.
Councillor Chris Westwood.
Claire Buchanan, minuting the meeting. Please can I ask you to bring the microphones nearer to you so that they get picked up on the meeting. Thank you.
Just to report.
If you're happy with the licensing officer.
Yeah.
So this report relates to an application Davies to vary the premises of Bar and Nightclub Street in. The application proposes a number of amendments. You'll see it's quite a complex application. Broadly speaking, it is to amend the licensable hours, to amend the layout of the premises in accordance with the plan that's been submitted, and then to add, amend, and remove slightly more complicated. You've got the full application at Appendix 1 in your bundle. I've provided Appendix 6, which shows a side-by-side comparison of what the license currently has as conditions and what the application is proposing. So that might help a little. The additional document with the conditions attached to the application is included in Appendix 1. That details all the proposed conditions and shows them in different colours as well, and that was provided by the applicant. So we've not received any representations from responsible authorities in relation to this application. It's my understanding that the applicant liaised with a number of them prior to submitting the application. And we have received 12 representations from other persons, and those are shown in appendix. The representations from other persons broadly relate to the 4 licensing objectives, but there's more of a focus on the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. There are a number of persons present to address the committee today, who you've already introduced. Members are reminded that they may only take into consideration matters which relate to the 4 licensing objectives. May I also remind members that only those other persons that have made written representations may address the subcommittee. I don't think we've got anyone here observing, so that's fine. And individuals may only refer to comments made in their written representation. If the subcommittee were minded to grant this application, I've laid out the proposed conditions in section 5 of the report. The subcommittee may reword these as they feel appropriate to promote the licence. I welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
None at this stage, thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Would the applicant like to address the committee?
We put this application forward and license objective details gone.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Please, could you
Yeah.
speak more directly
Yeah.
into the
I
mic,
said
bring
I
the
brought
microphone nearer to you?
Yeah, I brought
Yes.
Richard along to represent me. Is it okay if I pass it
Yeah.
to Richard now to talk?
So hi, good afternoon. My name is Richard Sims. I've been a nightclub manager for 14 years. I'm no longer in that industry, but a lot of what I've put forward in this license application for Lee and Calvin are things that I've used in the past. So my nightclub in Southampton, you'll find in these conditions, I've added some things that are tried and tested, policies and security related issues that have worked for me previously. Lee and Calvin asked me to come and have a look at this license application for them. They wanted to increase their hours, but wanted to put a package across rather than just request hours. As Bryony has said, there's no representation from police and EHO because we have worked with them closely to negotiate these conditions. I think you said it was Appendix 2 that has the conditions, colourful conditions, should we say, that has?
So that's included in Appendix 1,
Okay.
and then Appendix 6 is the side-by-side comparison of what you've got and then the proposed.
Perfect. So those colourful conditions where some are being removed and some are being added and some are staying, that was worked closely with police licensing to clean up the license and to put them into a better order and just make it more apparent what's going on there. EHO were discussed with, I had a really positive meeting with them, and this is why the license has some hours at 4 o'clock, some hours at 12, and some hours at 3. So this was, the original application would have been 4 across the board, but discussing it with EHO, gentlemen conceded some of those hours and looked at the bigger picture. EHO were happy with the concedence of those hours, and so we moved on. The other part of this application was a desire to become the gold standard for customer safety in Winchester. When I say that, it's because you won't find any other venue in Winchester doing the things that we've put on this application. One of those was a security walk at the end of an evening. This security walk is around the city centre after the doors are closed and after the customers have left the premises. This walk will go around trying to identify anyone who is vulnerable or needs attention inside the city centre. That's regardless of where they've come from. This is just a walk to ensure that customers from anywhere leave Winchester city centre safely and aren't vulnerable to crime. Another part of this application is to put on a ID scanner. These ID scanners are widely used in other cities. There is no ID scanner at the moment in Winchester. These ID scanners are critical to keeping antisocial behaviour out of a city. If someone is accused of antisocial behaviour or arrested for any sort of crime, their details can be added to this scanner and then barred from that area. So if only one place has it, one place can dictate whether those people come in. One of the key things for this, because I was one of the first places in Southampton to have an ID scanner, with your Whiskey One system, I'm not sure if it's called Whiskey One in Winchester, but it's the system in place where venues can talk directly to CCTV operatives in the city and then liaise with police. If you have a scanner, it quite quickly pops up that someone is either barred or a person of interest, especially if you run a red card scheme. And then you can pass these people on to CCTV. And this creates an environment where it is no longer comfortable for these antisocial people to be in the city centre and are quickly moved on. This was something that Calvin and Lee have already brought into place. They've already running this scanner on the front door. And so it was spoken with police licensing and they were happy to include it as a license condition on their license. Another part of bringing in that customer safety was to include a welfare room. And the welfare room is a medical facility inside the club, which is used for the sole purpose of customer welfare. This means it's stocked with first aid equipment. It's a safe, closed-off environment where trained first aiders can deal with anyone who is injured or in a vulnerable state. Again, this is something that I've used in Southampton and used to a really good degree. It's something that makes the customer feel safer and it allows the first aiders to deal with the situation in a safe, closed environment. Another part of the conditions was to put in extra training. Now this was extra training for the front of house team to identify customers who may be vulnerable to grooming. And this is just an extra layer of just trying to protect younger people that are going out now. And on top of that, there was written in the prevention of public nuisance, the way the club was laid out before, the back entrance to the smoking area was directly in line with one of the main club rooms, which is where you get a bit of noise bleed. When customers are leaving that room, they open the door, noise bleeds out, they close the door, and it stops for a bit. So the layout application shows a reconfiguring of this so that there is no chance now for noise bleed from a club room. There are hallways, new toilets to be installed, but the doorway out to the smoking area is now closed off. So you have to go out of a room, into a corridor, down a corridor, and then out another door to get to the smoking area. So for noise nuisance, this has been really good. Another area to this and the negotiation with EHO was that the garden, the rear area, would close at 3 o'clock at the very latest every night. So if the club was open till 4, the smoking area would still shut at 3. the club was to stay open till 3, its current hours, it would still close at 3. So there shouldn't be a issue with any noise nuisance out the back because an extended, noise nuisance out the back because the area would be closed off. Part of the conditions was also to put a member of security in there regardless of number of people. It doesn't matter if there's 3 people in the garden or 50 people in the garden. If someone's shouting, they're still shouting. So putting a member of security in there from when it opens to when it closes mitigates the chances of extra noise nuisance coming from 3 or 50 people. So this was the package that we put forward in the conditions in the application. And it was not only to go for the later hours, but it was to prove that this club can become the gold standard of customer safety for a night out, look after people's welfare. And part of the late night economy, I don't find enough places look after people when they leave the club or when they leave wherever they've come from. You know, they're kind of kicked out onto the street. I walked around Winchester quite a bit at the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, even 2 o'clock. Had a look at where people were congregating, had a look at where people were moving at the end of an evening, and found that majority of people were looking for food vendors, food outlets. You have a sort of kebab shop at the top end towards the theatre. You have Domino's, which is outside Vodka. You'll find that a lot of people congregate towards Domino's because they close at 3. So this is regardless of whose venue they've been in, they will still congregate towards Upper Brook Street for Domino's. Again, it doesn't matter what venue they come from, they would still go to the kebab shop at the top end, and the queue would be quite significant around that kebab shop. Part of being the only venue open the extra hour allows you to control that environment. So dispersal becomes a lot more manageable for security. It means that less people are coming out at the same time. So, for instance, there is a property towards here that shuts at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, they kick out. The street becomes quite packed. If you were then to kick out however many people from Vodka, another few hundred people would then come into the same vicinity, go to the same food outlets, and congregate. Whereas with the extra hour, the security team now have the ability to control and manage their dispersal in a nicer way. It gives people more time to go home from leaving the other venues, which means there's less people in the city centre at a certain time, at a particular time. And once the venue shuts, the security team will go and do a walk, and they do it every single night just to make sure that there is no one vulnerable left in the city centre. And that is pretty much the package as a whole.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask about entry to the venue as well? Because I believe that's been brought up by some of the respondents as an issue with people congregating on the way in, not just on the way out. Is there any package that will support that area?
So part of the later hours didn't look at the way people queued, but that was brought to Lee's attention, and they have started to look at how well they can, whether they can move the queue to a bigger part of the pavement area. There are some flats that side, so you're starting to balance the problems of people walking past road on the sort of smaller side of the pavement to putting people directly under someone's flat. So there's a balancing act to have there, but it is definitely now, it's been brought to Lee's attention. They have started to look at a better way of managing that front.
Okay. Is there any change in the amount of personnel or staff you're employing as a result of these packages? Are you increasing the coverage effectively, the staff to numbers of customers?
Yes, absolutely. So straight away you would have an extra member of security on immediately just because of the smoking area. There's an extra member of staff called a welfare officer who will be employed solely to look after people who look vulnerable. So with increasing the package, I think you looked at about 12 extra members of staff would be employed just to cover the extra members of security, the extra staff needed to run the front door, run the welfare office, the welfare room. So yes, it would increase.
Sorry, one further question. Apologies. In terms of the dispersal, then the impact is greatest on the closest neighbourhoods. Can you just comment on how you would, you talked about the walk around the city and so on, I understand that. Could you just explain a little bit more detail how you would manage the very local impact on the very local residents, and then as it extends, the area extends out, then it dissipates, but you're still obviously looking at the care of the people. So I'm interested in what you can do to help that very local area.
Yeah, so obviously the dispersal itself would mean that there'd be less people at 3 o'clock than now. There'd be less people walking around the streets, less people outside Domino's, less people in the actual city centre at 3 o'clock because they would have more time to disperse. With the extra security personnel, it means you've got extra feet and extra eyes on the ground to be able to manage where people are going, be able to manage any antisocial behaviour. There will be people that get missed, but it's not because, you know, people aren't trying to find them. It will just be because it's happened when their backs are turned. The walk around is specifically designed to look for, and I use vulnerable customers as an example, but if they find antisocial behaviour or violence, they will step in. That is another key element of it. You don't know from when they leave your venue what's going on around the corner, let alone what's going on in the city centre or down the road. But by doing the walk around, you identify these things quicker, sooner, and therefore you're putting people who are vulnerable to violence, attacks, any sort of crime. They are now got a layer of safety baked in because the security team will be on with their Whiskey One radio, so they have direct communication with city centre cameras and police.
What's the maximum capacity with this club?
Yes, 700.
Now, do you monitor that to ensure that you don't exceed the 700?
Yeah. We've got we have clickers as everyone comes in, so we know how many people's in the venue at every minute. So as soon as someone leaves, they're clicked out. So we always know how much we hold. And if we get to capacity, which we have, obviously we'll let anyone else in.
If you're then closing an hour after everybody else, how are you going to control people trying to get back in after 3 o'clock? You're always going to get some people trying to come into the club when the others are closing down.
What we normally tend to do is we don't let anyone in after a certain time. At the minute, we close at 3. So our last entry is about half an hour before. If we were going to close at 4, we wouldn't let anyone in after 3. More than likely, most people after 3 be intoxicated anyway, so we wouldn't want them in. But the idea is the people that are in can carry on sort of dancing and entertainment until 4 o'clock, but not to add to that number.
Yeah. Sorry, we've got no responsible authorities here today, so can we move on to the... Speaking. Charles Pascal.
Hi, I'm Charles Pascal. I'm resident of Upper Brook Street. And I shall keep this very short, that I stand by my letter of objection. But I'm interested that there is so much emphasis on people who have taken, been in the premises being at risk. And there doesn't seem to be any real emphasis on the prevention of nuisance to local residents. And in my objection, I made the point that some of us have to work the next day. Some of us even have to work during the hours that the vodka bar is proposing to be open, international standardization, and we have meetings through the night. And trying to do this with the sheer quantity of noise and disturbance that there is at the moment is nigh on impossible at times. Sleep is something that we look for more of. But I don't think I have anything particularly to add to that, but welcome any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Pascal, have you reported these incidents?
I've reported a number of them in the past. I've been resident for 7 years, well, just over 7 years now. Have reported the incidents to the police. When there's been fighting going on, it's been a 999 call. When it's something, well, none of it's minor to warrant a phone call, but I have tried I think it's the 101 service and so on, and there has been absolutely no reaction from the police. Nothing. No investigation, no presence, nothing. So I have to say that recently, unless it's really bad outside, I've given up. Policing is something that we don't see down Upper Brook Street.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can we have Adrian Hutton, please?
Right, my name's Adrian Hutton. I live at 8 Merchants Place, so I think you would call me a local resident because we're, as the crow flies, within about 100 yards of the main entry on Upper Brook Street to the nightclub. We've lived at number 8 for 18 years now. We have been disturbed on a reasonably regular basis by people coming and going. In recent times, actually, more people coming. That happens either outside KFC, Domino's, in the car park, whatever. So you can't guarantee all those people are going to the nightclub, but it's a fairly high possibility that a lot of them are. So that's an area of our concern because we feel that the extension of hours, and as I understand it, virtually every area of activity is going to be, the hours are going to be extended by at least 1.5 and probably 3, between 1.5 and 3 hours. And that's bringing us to a very late time at night and very early in the morning. I would so much echo Mr. Gaskell's comments about people having to work the next morning. My wife regularly has to work the next morning and very early at that. And she's the one who gets disturbed slightly more than I by any sort of activity that's going on outside. I can't say it's every night, but it is reasonably regular. And with regards to putting in complaints, I echo what Mr. Gaskell said, because we don't get a presence up there of any sort. And I'd like to know whether the security guards which are proposed are actually going to walk up and down Upper Brook Street apart from anywhere else, because I suspect that that's where quite a lot of trouble occurs. In fact, I have evidence of it from 1 or 2 Upper Brook Street residents. So my concern is, I suppose, public nuisance, which is the noise area, and also the activity that we hear in the car park. Regular sort of screaming and shouting, and sometimes I can't tell whether it's fighting, but I think it's quite likely. So I think that any measures that are going to be taken against this extension are going to have to be very comprehensive to improve the situation in any way. think on the whole, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, can I, sorry,
Please.
sorry, Mr. Haddon. A question. You say you reported. Do you report this to the police? Have you reported to the police in the past or elsewhere?
Well, we brought it to the police on a couple. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
On a couple of occasions, but I did fill in forms of complaint, which when they existed, and in fact, recently we've actually been away from home quite a lot, so I can't comment on the last month or so, I have to say. But if there's a serious incident, then we'll certainly put in a report of some sort.
Okay, thank you.
I also need to know, if I can, the methods of reporting these days. I presume one can report by email rather than forms, because filling in forms and handing them in is a bit of a cumbersome business for us. So if that's...
I would assume so.
Hmm?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have Sorrel Collins, please.
Chair, just before you proceed,
Sorry.
after each individual's come up and you've asked questions, I do believe that if the applicant wishes to ask questions and you permit, then they may do so. So could I just ask you to check and make sure they don't have any questions?
So obviously I can't comment on what the police actions are or what happens. But there is definitely a chance to move the street walk at the end of an evening to incorporate the Upper Brook Street. So as I was going around, I kind of followed the crowd. And the majority of the crowd do head towards city centre and then to the top to go towards the kebab shops.
Yes, they're looking for something to eat at that point.
Exactly,
aren't they?
yeah.
Yes.
But this is at 3 o'clock
Yeah.
when I'm looking. So at 4 o'clock, the dispersal comes a little bit more dispersed. They do go a little bit because they go directly home. So if we were to move the walk to incorporate more of the Upper Brook Street area and try and ensure that you guys are, well, it's mitigated, the noise that is coming towards you guys. Would that help?
I'm sure I can't speak for the residents on the street because
This is-
Upper Merchants Place, you probably
Yes.
understand, is off Upper Brook Street. It's an enclave off Upper Brook Street, about halfway up towards North Walls. But I know from talking to residents that that's a major concern, and I think you'll probably have some more about that in a moment. But I imagine that they would be extremely happy if they were to know that there was a security guard, at least one, actually patrolling that area and not just the tight city centre.
Yeah,
Yes,
because they
I'm
go
sure
around
that
in
would help.
pairs. They go around in pairs with the Whiskey One radio because you never leave a member of security on their own.
No.
And it's obviously
Good.
just protection for them.
Yeah.
But the walk in itself is there as a deterrent. It's to deter violence, it's to deter people with criminal intent, and also to deter people antisocial.
I'm sure that would be a step in the right direction. I think our main concerns are things like the time onto which this is going on, 4 o'clock in the morning rather than 3 on average, and every night of the week, almost apart from Sunday, is a concern because of people who have to work. So, but I'm sure that's a step in the right direction.
Of
Certainly.
course.
No? You're done with me? Okay. All right? Thank you very much.
And Chair, can I just check that the applicant didn't have any questions for the first gentleman, Mr.
sorry, yeah.
Pascal, as well?
I'll be honest, it would have been the same question. So if he wants to answer the same question, then more than happy.
Yeah, well, Mr. Pascal, does he want to say something? Yes.
What was that?
I think that regular patrolling up Upper Brook Street by security guards or whatever might be beneficial. I don't think it's necessarily going to prevent the issues and so on, because you talked earlier on, it's, things happen when backs are turned and right up the other end of the street. But it would be a possibly beneficial additional measure to be taken. But again, the major concern, and apart from the damage that's happened to property and so on, which can be done very quickly. You say stop, but the damage is done and so on. The real concern is the hours that we're going to be woken up at. It's regular 3 and probably 3. Going to be awake when bars open. So on, that's something that damages our quality of life, but something that live at the moment. But 4 is going to be ridiculous, and if the bar remains full to capacity, 700 people coming in, that's going to be a major issue.
I have no more questions, but thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sorrel Collins. Hello, Lee, Kelvin, I've met you before. Unfortunately, I have become quite ill because of my sleep deprivation, because of the noise regularly on a regular night coming out through the week. And it does happen to be, I'm afraid, the nights that the vodka bar is open. When it's closed, when the students aren't here, I don't have a problem. The sleeping is fine. But as soon as they come again in September, I am woken up regularly, or have been woken up regularly in the mornings. I've done 101, I've done the police, I've been on the phone, and they've asked me to, to be on the line, but I'm already awake at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I'm thinking, oh, how long I'm going to get back to sleep again? And then I'm having to wake up again. And I work at the hospital, and I have not been able to carry out my job properly over this last year or so because I have had sleep deprivation. I hear it up the street coming out of a bar going in, and I wake there thinking, will they please go? Will they hurry up? Please go past my door, because I know what's been going on. They have jumped on our car last year, the last semester. They were jumped to, there's a crowd of them, and they jumped over that car and they did dent our roof. It was reported to the police and everything, but they haven't, there was nothing they could do because I did not have any video evidence of who it was. And I don't surmise that I should have a video outside my front door to say who these people are that are jumping in sick and screaming outside. I've also had evidence in the past of somebody being chased out of a vodka bar because they were being a stop search for drugs. In fact, it was the same night that I'd come out of hospital out of a major incident, and they were in the back of our garden, climbing over a wall. The police were chasing them. And it's this regular anxiety of wondering what's going to happen every time somebody comes out of a vodka bar outside my house. I sleep at the front. I can't sleep at the back because our house does not have that kind of layout. I have double glazing. I've tried earplugs, everything. And it, unfortunately, North Wales is an area where an awful lot of students reside. And it's a very easy cut through to get to through North Wales. And when you live in that kind of anxiety every night, wondering whether you're going to get woken up 4 or 5 times a week, it's not easy to go out the following morning. And I become angry about it as well, because I know everybody's out there trying to protect everybody else in these nightclubs, but I have a life as well. And also, there is a part of it which is on the Human Rights Act, and I was quoted this on my representation, it protects your right to enjoy your property peacefully. And I'm not really sure that has really been taken into consideration. I understand from a business point of view how wonderful this would be, extending your hours, more revenue, more people coming in, but quite rightly, if you've got 700 people in there, are they all going to come out? If they don't all come out at once, I'm concerned that you said you've got somebody that will come up the street and check all the streets, but so you've got 20 people coming out. So do you send that person up the street, or those 2 people up the street, to check on those 20 people? Or what happens when another 20 people come out at exactly the same time? You're not sending somebody out every time you've got people coming out of your bar. We do have an awful lot of mess up there as well. There's sickness, there's vomit, which we clear up on a regular basis. And what also concerns me, if you're providing food, because I believe you're going to be providing food extra hours as well, or not in your application, no? So is Domino Pizza then going to want to put in a further application to extend their hours for these people, because you're coming out? At the moment, I think, is it 4 o'clock or 4:30? I thought it was 4:30 the extension had been asked to, not 4 o'clock.
So it's 4 a.m. for licensable activities.
And then, but they still pour out at 4:30,
and
wouldn't they?
4:30 for closing.
Closing. So it's 4:30 they're going to be coming out. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work. And that means I will not get a full night's sleep if they're going in. And quite often, a lot of them are drunk before they even get in your place. And I don't know how you, some of them are shouting and screaming up the street. I don't know how you control that before they come in, because they're certainly loud when they're queuing up to go in, and they're quite intimidating for other people to go past them when they are queuing up to go in. So my concern is you can do what you like in your bar, but I would like to know that my peace and quiet and my quality of life is being able to go back to what I deserve and what I actually would like, please. Okay, that's what I've got to say. And I am entitled to that. As you know, my human rights is that I can live in peacefully and where I live. And I shouldn't have to move. I shouldn't have to put earplugs in. I shouldn't have to get sleeping tablets because of the noise that I have every week. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
The only thing I can add to that is that we've never had.
You had your microphone on, please. Put your microphone on when you.
It's at the front.
That's it.
Yeah. Hear me now?
Yeah.
All good. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so we've got logs here of every time when people are in,
Yeah.
every sort of half hour, we know how many people's in the venue. So what we do, I could check these like sort of 3 o'clock. I can tell you sort of how many people's in the venue.
Yeah.
And there's never been that many people. I mean, if I give an example.
But Kelvin, if you say to me 20 people leave your nightclub at 3 o'clock, who's following those 20 people or going around dispersal? And then 5 minutes later, another 20 people leave. So who's following those as well? Because you've got an awful lot of people coming out to dribs and drabs and drabs. You can't have somebody in one place all the time, can you?
No, we can't.
Checking them.
I mean, the other issue we've got is there's a pub around the corner that shuts at the same time. So a lot of people walk past our venue and sort of go up the road. So we can't guarantee that person or those are coming from
And
our
which
venue.
pub is that?
The Alfie's. It closes at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, that's not right round your corner. That's a bit further away than yours. And I agree, Alfie's is just as much of a problem.
Yeah.
And I do not feel comfortable walking outside or going out to eat in the high street at the moment at 9 o'clock because of people pulling out of Alfie's.
Yeah.
No,
I understand that, but what I'm trying to say is, if we're saying after 3 o'clock, we have a couple of staff in that area, in that last hour, in that area around Upper Brook Street, around the residential areas. I mean, we had a time last year when there's a resident at the back, Parchment Street at the back, and they had a similar issue with people in the garden with noise. So what we said to them was, we've got a noise monitor to check the noise. Someone walks around regular to see if it sounds too loud, we turn it down. But what we also done, we gave them a phone number and said, if you've got any issues at any time, it's disturbing you, any noise, just give us a ring, and we get it sorted there and then, which is what we have done in the past.
okay.
But I'm not saying, okay, if somebody got noise, give us a ring. But if you were to give us a ring, say, I've got a problem, we've rang the police, they can't help, we could send some security up there. If it's noise related, or if it's an ambulance, someone needs help.
Or it's damage to our, you know, like our cars last week,
if
which
it's
just
damaged,
shocking.
we can get apprehend them and get them arrested for criminal damage. We don't mind doing that sort of thing, but
you can understand how we're told to do it on a protocol. We're told to phone the police. We're told to do 101s. The more times you call, the more time we can do something about it. But every time you call, and you know, that's what I get. Even when I call the council, I get keep calling, because unless we've got any numbers, we can't do anything about it. But Upper Brook Street is an area where there's an awful lot of old people who live in that street as well. And it's not always quite how they see or perceive that they can do things. You know, the easiest thing for them is to get a piece of paper and write on it. And they're so frightened now, or they don't know what to do about it. And I feel sorry for them as well. And I, you know, partly I speak to them, and I don't like the fact that, you know, our views and their feelings and their sleep are not being taken into consideration. And at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, should I have to keep calling the police, waiting online, taking photographs of all this thing? I mean, the other thing I would like to ask is why there is not CCTV facing up towards Upper Brook Street. Because last year there was definitely regularly a couple that were coming to your venue, and every night your club was open, they would have a fight between the pair of them walking along to North Walls, and I don't know what those two. I'm glad if they finish college, they've actually gone and they're not going to come back again. But they were a nightmare every time your club was open, and they would come out.
The only thing I can say regarding that, we've got a new camera fitted outside.
I saw that.
We've got quite a few outside, but this particular one, it spins round on the PTZ, and you can get to the cathedral, you can count the bricks out to how clear it is. And we spin it round, we actually leave it on Upper Brook Street all night. That's where we keep it. So if there's anything going on past Domino's,
you can pick it up past Domino's.
We can pick it up from there, yeah.
Okay.
And that's on all night up the road.
Right.
And that's been installed since. At least it was last year. I thought it was early part of this year, but that's for that reason.
So police wouldn't come to you if I've gone and reported that I've had damage on my car. They don't come to you and say, "Can we see your CCTV?" No.
Not for that, no. But they can do. They know we've got this, and they've come to us. But there's been other crimes in the city, and they want to follow a car around the city or a fight up by the traffic lights or outside McDonald's, and we've given the CCTV on numerous occasions to see because ours is very clear. It's not just a fuzzy image. It's really clear. So we have assisted them when they need it. Oh yeah, and now we've got the scanner.
I can understand what you've just said about the scanner.
Everyone that comes in the venue, they have to be scanned, so we know who they are, where they're from. So anyone who's apprehended, or even just with the identification, we can go back, see what they're wearing, and identify them on the scanner, so we know who it is. So if the police need to go and see them later on.
But it's got too far then, though, hasn't it? Because I'm awake. It's just got too far. It needs to be stopped before any of this starts coming up our street, and I don't know how you're going to prevent that. But it is an area that's so close to the vodka bar, and with 700 people already in your bar, I do wonder if it's in the right location in the end. I mean, you need to really. I've been a student and I've been to nightclubs, but at 4:30, where's it going to go from there? Is it going to go to 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock? There seems to be no end to this opening hours.
I appreciate what you're saying. We've been there ourselves since 2013, and it's been a club or a pub of some sort for 30 years.
I know, for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, whenever there's an issue, noise or the sort of complaints you're sort of saying, if we have an issue, the environmental health always contact us. And we haven't any visits or any calls from them. No. We ask them regularly if there's any problems so we can identify them.
But then we rely on, I have an app on my phone which I report I've been given an app on my phone which says if I've got any antisocial behaviour. And the last 3 weeks, I've actually gone in there and put in what time it is. I've had a reference back from the council, but nobody's ever contacted me. I have no idea if anything's been done about that. So I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not sure that I'm being heard or represented in any other form, I'm afraid. So I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So whether they're coming to you or not, I have no idea. It's not up to me to come to you. It's up to whoever I go to come to you, not me. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I have to say. I'm sorry, but I'm quite passionate because I am struggling with sleep and I have been ill because of it. So, okay, thank you. Anybody else wants to ask me anything?
Thank you very much.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, Mr. Pascal, we've had your chance to speak and I can't. No, I'm sorry. We have to work to the system, I'm afraid. It's been asked, that's been it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Emily Hong, please.
My name's Emily. I live at 125 Upper Brook Street, which is the upper end of the street. I live close to the traffic lights, the junction where the traffic lights are across the road from the vicarage. So it is at the farthest end of the road. But it seems to be quite a magnet outside my property for shouting, screaming, lots of noise at, as has just been described, 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, particularly on Fridays and Saturdays. Like the lady who's just spoke before, it does have a detrimental effect on your health when you have a disturbed night's sleep, which is fairly regularly. I've been in the property for 2 years now, and with the exception of the lockdown, I've lost count of the number of weekends that I've been woken on a Friday or a Saturday. But it does happen during the week as well. There are weekdays where it does happen, which is annoying when you have to get up and work in the morning as well, and then you go to work feeling groggy, and you know, so it has a detrimental impact on your life. My neighbour and I don't put out our recycling or our bins the night before now, because we know that the rubbish, there's been a lot of incidents where our rubbish has been kicked all over the street. The one thing that I find particularly aggravating and unnerving is when I get my door banged on at, sometimes it's 11, 12 at night, but also it does happen at 1 in the morning. 1 or 2 in the morning, and I don't class myself as a vulnerable person, but I do live by myself, and it's very unpleasant to be woken by that, somebody hammering on your door. Not just hammering, it's as if they run up to the door and throw their weight against it, and this happens fairly regularly as well. I have reported an incident previously where there was a very violent outburst outside the house that I live in. But again, nothing was ever done about it. I had no response from the police about that. And I'm just concerned that this is only going to get worse with the extended opening hours and the extended licensing hours. I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Yes, I have one question, if I may.
Yeah.
Thank you. How did you report that incident that you just related to?
The Hampshire Constabulary has an online reporting form that I filled in to do with antisocial behaviour, because it wasn't, the incident had passed, so it was the next day that I reported it, so it wasn't a 999 call. But I reported it, and I got an email to say that this incident had been reported, but that was it. My next door neighbour has called 111, I think, on another occasion where there was a very violent sounding outburst, and screaming and shouting, which then continued on into the car park, St. Peter's car park. And somebody was obviously kicking, I thought they were kicking cars, they might have been kicking the metal bins, I don't know, but it sounded particularly nasty, and that's not the sort of thing that you want to be happening outside your house. And coming home by yourself at night, if you've been out late, you worry about walking through that on your way back to your property, especially if you live alone as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, 8, please, on virtual.
Miss Healy, I don't know if you want to unmute your camera and your microphone so that you can make your representation. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you. I don't know if you want to turn your camera on, or if you're happy to keep that off, that's fine. As long as we can hear you, we can. Thank you.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. If you want
Okay, if the image wobbles, I'm sorry, I am visually impaired, so I'll do my best to try and hold it straight. I am a resident of Upper Brook Street. I live in Heritage Court, which is slightly set back off of the main street. But my main concerns, as I said in my objection, are, again, as many others have mentioned, is about noise. And I haven't reported to the police because I am registered blind, and I don't feel I have enough descriptive evidence to go to the police and say, well, there's this noise on the street, or I can see fights, but I definitely hear them on a regular basis. I wouldn't want to walk around the street on my own at night, purely because I don't know, I can't tell if I'm going to walk into friend or foe. And I also am in the process of getting a guide dog, and my main concern is when I get a dog, who is going to clean up the streets, particularly if there's smashed glass everywhere and, you know, more unsavoury messes. So, for example, residents have said that they have to clear up vomit regularly. Those are my main concerns. So it's all about safety and noise and actually keeping the streets clean after the club closes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yeah.
No questions.
Carry on.
No questions, Kate. But one comment about the glass is that glass can't physically come from vodka because it's not an off license. If it's broken glass, it would be from an off license or from a
Right.
because glassware can't leave a non-licensed premises.
Okay, I'm not sure if I read it correctly then, but I thought you were going to sell alcohol for off the premises use. Is that correct?
I believe that's in the license just for the garden area out the back. So it's still in the license, still in the licensed premises, but no one's allowed out with a glass bottle of any kind.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have Michael Hobby, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Hobby. I'm here on behalf of the trustees and volunteers of the Winchester Street Pastors. We're very concerned about people having to find their own way home at 4 o'clock in the morning without any street pastor assistance. But I do have to advise, so that you're aware, that we would not be street pastors will not be patrolling later than 3. At 3 o'clock, we may get call to do something, and we can often be around at 4 o'clock in the morning and get home. Well, we may even be later, because if we're in the middle of something, we will always take it to a conclusion. But on a regular basis, to be there at 4 would be beyond the remit that we've got as a national thing, is that we finish at 3, which is, in practice, means that we're there until an incident that happens at 3 is sorted out. So we really just wanted you to be aware of that, and if that's the main, I think, remit of our. I mean, we would ideally not want any. I'm only talking about Fridays and Saturdays, but we ideally wouldn't want any venue in Winchester to be licensed to be after 3 o'clock. Questions?
Thank you. Have you any questions on
that? Yeah, no questions.
No, I mean, you do provide a very valuable service. We do appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
And we take your comments very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you may wish, Chair, to allow the applicant to summarise if they have any comments in response to the public speaking, and then you may choose to retire to make your decision.
Just one quick question. Do you keep a log of all any complaints that come in?
So I've worked at the council for about 4.5 years now, and in my time I've only received one complaint about vodka bar to licensing. Just to give the committee some context, there's a number of different ways that people can report issues to the council. Antisocial behaviour reports, which are available through the reporting function on the website, go to the customer services team, and they are then allocated to a team beyond that. I believe in most instances they are sent over to the neighbourhood services team who deal with antisocial behaviour. So how they resolve that complaint, I wouldn't know. I've not received one of those myself. There is also the option to report noise nuisance directly to environmental health using their email address. Every noise complaint has a corresponding reference number. They could be easily searched. I'm not sure how many have been received of late, but that's something that environmental health can certainly provide. The noise complaints to environmental health need to prove statutory nuisance for there to be action taken. And statutory nuisance, forgive me if I don't know the exact definition because it's not my area of expertise, but statutory nuisance needs to be on more than one occasion and fairly regular to be proven. So it is often the case that an environmental health officer will go back to the customer and encourage them to fill out log sheets or offer to have a noise monitor installed in their house. Again, not my department, so I couldn't guarantee that every customer gets a response or what the response time is. And then obviously we've had the conversation about Hampshire Constabulary again. I don't work for the police, but there is the facility to report things to them via 999, 101, or via their online reporting system. I don't know the state of the police's resourcing in Winchester at the moment, but I understand that the neighbourhood policing team finish before 1 o'clock generally. Response and patrol police are on duty 24 hours. But they are not always based out of Winchester. They might be coming from Basingstoke or Andover.
Thank you. Wish to summarise anything?
Yeah, so just on that point about complaints, we did believe EHO were going to be here today, and we have an email from them to say that there's only been 2 complaints, and they were both in 2021. From hearing from the residents, that doesn't sound particularly correct, but this is the email from Abigail Toms from Winchester to say that has been. There has been temporary events notices put in over the last 6 months, 8 months to trial this. It was to trial and also to adapt some of the conditions that we were going to put in. And all of those occasions, there hasn't been any complaints brought up to Lee and Calvin. What I would say is quite a lot of this nuisance that we've had today, we cannot guarantee it is from the club because everyone kicks out at the same time at the moment. But we were looking at a package of things to help mitigate these issues, to help mitigate the fact that people coming out of vodka might cause nuisance to Upper Brook Street, and from hearing from the residents, adapting the security walk after hours is something that we can absolutely do to keep Upper Brook Street safer for residents, look for that noise nuisance. And if we can identify it, this is where the scanner is incredibly important. You can then bar these people from town. They won't be allowed to come into vodka. They won't be allowed to come into the city centre to enjoy a night out. And by doing that, you send a message to the community as a whole that antisocial behaviour isn't acceptable, noise nuisance won't be acceptable, violence isn't acceptable, and you will be punished for it. And I did 14 years in Southampton. One of the biggest punishments you can actually give someone is barring them from a social life. The police, as you know, don't have the feet on the ground at the moment, and normally when they arrest someone, it's a slap on the wrist, just told to go on their way. But if you can ban someone from having a social life, it really impacts their life. So by sending that message, by telling people what we are now doing, will hopefully deter this antisocial behaviour, send a message so that people don't do it. But we can use the cameras at vodka, use the security team at vodka to try and better protect Upper Brook Street. And this is probably working closer with the residents of Upper Brook Street to get some more information from them so that the club can act on it quicker and be proactive rather than reactive. But like we said, the club has been there as a nightclub for 30 years plus. I don't know the date, but it's definitely been 30 plus years. It's got a 3 o'clock at the moment. We're just asking for that extra hour. And for that extra hour, there is a package in place to really look after the residents, to help look after the residents, but people's welfare on a night out. People aren't going to stop going out. People are going to want to go out. They are going to want to socialise, whether they go to the pubs, the clubs, the bars. They are going to be in the city centre. This is where we are. We are a city centre. But the club are going way beyond what is expected of any nightclub by putting in these extra measures, by putting in all of these extra layers of safety. And yeah, that's all I've got to say, really.
Thank you. Can I ask a question on the scanner ID? Is it sort of like a driving license card or something like this that people need to register for to be able to actually
Yeah,
work?
so ID scanners work on actual ID. So you can use your passport, your driving license, your forces card, but it has to be a genuine government approved ID. So obviously from that you get a lot of data. What the scanner also does is it shares this information with other scanners across the country. So you could pick up someone who's been violent in Norwich, Southampton, anywhere, and you could say, no, you're not welcome in this club. And again, anyone that you've barred can be shared with these other scanners, and it kind of stops people from, if they're barred from Southampton, coming to Winchester, because at the moment there isn't, well, these guys have put the scanner in, but up until they did, there was nothing stopping them from coming to Winchester to have a night out. But the scanner is an extremely powerful tool at antisocial deterrence.
Right, thank you very much, everybody.
What will happen now is the committee will retire to make their decision. That decision is likely to be made today, but may be made within 5 working days. Once the decision has been made, they will either read it out today at the meeting, so you're welcome to stay and listen to that decision if you wish. Otherwise, you'll receive a notification within 5 working days to the email address or address that you sent across your representation with. Okay.
Bryony, the Eversley and the Wickham's been booked if people do wish to wait. Okay.
you. Ethics and having firm belief. Recognise. Application. PD5. PD. And you result. Publication. This.